Well, folks, welcome back to the Rife Report, and today we are going to be talking about the 2028 Democrat presidential primary. We have a new poll from AtlasIntel. They were the most accurate pollster during the 2024 and 2022 midterm elections and then presidential elections. New poll out from AtlasIntel right now showing that former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Representative AOC from New York are pulling ahead, with Kamala Harris falling down to the third spot in this most recent poll. Really, truly an embarrassment for Kamala Harris, but it's kind of her own damn fault. She did it to herself. She is the reason she is here. She could be leading the Democrat Party if she wanted to, but she doesn't have the drive. She doesn't have the motivation, or she's just lazy. It's as simple as that. But today we're going to be diving into the Democrat primary for 2028 and what this early snapshot can really tell us about the 2028 Democrat primaries. So first, we'll just get into the poll right now. This is an AtlasIntel poll conducted May 21st to the 27th of 2025. There's roughly about 3,500 adults with a 2% margin of error in this poll. Like we said, most accurate pollster. Even people like Nate Silver, who I don't 100% agree with, says Atlas, they're the most accurate pollster in the 2024 and 2022 elections. So how does it break down right now? Buttigieg came out with about a third of the vote here. AOC comes out with about 1/5 of the vote. Kamala Harris comes in at about 16%. And then you go down the line. Booker's got 10, Newsom's got 7, Shapiro's got 4, Whitmer's got under 4. None of the above. You notice someone missing here, Tim Walz, even though he's been so active all around the country, don't see his name anywhere on this list. But everyone who's under 1%, Murphy, Roque, Kahan, Stephen Smith, Andy Bashir, Rahm Emanuel, J.B. Pritzker. Obviously, it is, I don't want to say it's very clear which direction the country's going, but I almost might say this might be a little bit of an outlier poll here. And there's a couple reasons, but we'll go through it. So right now, Buttigieg lead is up. Notably, it's up about 4 points from AtlasIntel's poll in April, while AOC gained about 4 percentage points and Kamala Harris dropped about 8 or 9 points since the most recent AtlasIntel poll, signaling that there could be a shift in the voters that they're polling here, but it also could just be Democrat sentiment. There's a shift among Democrat sentiment away from Kamala Harris. Look, she was the nominee in 24. She had the most name recognition of anyone on this list by far. And that's why she was leading. It's as simple as that. But I think this poll really stands out because there's a lot of polls that have shown Harris leading, but she's been losing lots of ground. Go over to the aggregate right now. Clearly, Harris is up, has about 24% in the aggregate right now. Pete Buttigieg has 20%. Without her in it, Buttigieg is still leading. AOC still holds about 14%. Clearly, Kamala Harris has been dropping. The poll numbers from where she was, even you go after the election. You know, you had some in the 40s up there, but no, she is really, really dropping down. And this is a lie. Second inauguration of Donald Trump. That must be glitching out or something, because that did not happen right here. But clearly you can see a sentiment moving against Kamala Harris, against that faction of the Democrat Party. Now, you look on the Republican side in this same poll here. You can see J.D. Vance is leading with about 37%. Marco Rubio's coming in at 18%. About 15-16% are saying none of these on the list. Donald Trump Jr., Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Youngkin, Scott, Cotton, Abbott, Kemp, Christie, Noem. You know, look at Brian Kemp. If Brian Kemp really skipped out on the 2026 Georgia Senate race so he could run for president, this is how much, we don't know if it's true. But if it was, look how big of a fat mistake that was. What a fat mistake. But also you can see here that in this poll, right now on a generic ballot, Democrats have about 50%, Republicans have about 42% in this election right here. Which, if you were to look at the 2026 or 2024 House map, right here, and we were to shift, if the entire country were to shift, even let's just say, let's do it by... Let's just say in this poll, let's say it's even just 3% that you see this poll shift, which I don't think is something that's out of the ordinary to see a 3-point shift for the Democrat Party. Look at this. All of a sudden, Democrats still don't have control. Oops, and we shifted that to the Republicans. If we shift it 3 points to the Democrats all of a sudden have a 224 lead. You're flipping places in Alabama. You even flip places like Alaska. You go, oops, I did not mean to do it. You go into California and you see, look at this. Anywhere in here, you can clearly see that Republicans, even places like Mike Lawler's district here, gets very, very close. Very, very close here. So you can see simply what a 4-point, 3-point shift for the Democrats would do. Look, shifted another point. Okay, now you're looking, Democrats still just picked up another 5 votes, and that's only 4 percentage points of a shift, which that could be a dangerous place to be if you're Republicans losing the House. With simply a 3-point shift and you're losing the House, not a great place to be. Republicans really, now that's assuming a nationwide, everything moves to the left by 3 points. That's simply just not how reality works. But it shows you how vulnerable Republicans can be if something like that were to happen. Now, back to the Democrat primary with Pete Buttigieg here. Now, why Pete? Pete, I think he's about 43, 44 years old. And what he has going for him, he is a polished, and I mean polished communicator who knows how, at least he's getting better with trying to appeal to moderates. And there's this great unawokening happening within the Democrat Party so they can appeal to moderates. I think people like Pete Buttigieg is leading the way. Gavin Newsom, he's a quasi-moderate. He's a pseudo-moderate. That's the better word. He's a pseudo-moderate. He's not really a moderate. He's just moving that direction because that's what he needs to do if he wants to be president. Now, Buttigieg, with his tenure as Secretary or Transportation Secretary, it did give him a more national role, something that gave him visibility across the country. And he definitely has a pragmatic, results-oriented approach to politics. And although I vehemently disagree with a lot of his policies, and I think he went very woke during the Biden administration, I think it makes sense why Pete Buttigieg, because of all of the candidates you're looking at here, who is probably the least woke person in here? Okay, you're looking at maybe Shapiro, maybe Whitmer, maybe, and then you have Buttigieg in there, because otherwise you have AOC, Harris, Booker, Newsom. It's like, that's just not a great mix right there, and especially with the Democrat Party trying to come back more to the center, trying to, at least even with their rhetoric, just come back to the center. I think that it will help them. But from someone who's on the right side of the aisle, Buttigieg's lead does make sense here. Because I think he is seen as more of a safer choice for Democrats trying to win back votes after the 2024 defeat. And his focus on infrastructure, practical governance, aligns with what a lot of Americans want on both sides of the aisle. People want competence. They want competence. I feel like that's what the last couple of elections have been about. In 2020, they wanted someone who was competent. They didn't feel Trump was competent. Okay, well, then they saw how really incompetent, how much chaos Biden was. That made Trump look very, very competent and very unchaotic. But now, here we are right now with Donald Trump. And although, yes, I think there's a lot of competence in the administration, trust me, there's a lot of chaos right now going around with tariffs, with immigration, which can be okay. That can be okay. But if you can deliver on things like the one big beautiful bill, getting tax cuts, getting this appropriations bill done, that's going to be a big deal. But however you look at Buttigieg, he is a serious lack of a base, or I should say a voter base, particularly in the South among minorities and African Americans, which will be a huge hurdle, especially if you're looking at a primary. Early primary starts are not places like Iowa anymore. South Carolina, deep ties to local African American voters. And Buttigieg's Midwest roots may not translate in his elitist picture, may not translate well in places like South Carolina. There's also a big critique of Buttigieg's appeal that maybe name recognition. He may have more name recognition than he does having like a bold vision. But with 3 years to 2028, he definitely could refresh his vision for the future. But ultimately, I think it's more people, his name recognition, he's been getting out there. Same thing with AOC. She's been going around doing these, fighting the oligarchy tours. Buttigieg, he's been in Iowa campaigning. He's been going on podcasts. He's really been trying to get his name out there as of right now. Now, looking at AOC, she's like 35 years old, and she's the progressive firebrand who Republicans would love if Democrats nominated her. She has a lot of traction with young voters in the Democrat base, and like we said, that fight in the oligarchy tour with Bernie Sanders has drawn huge crowds in deep blue and deep red states. which has really boosted her national profile, and the fact that she raised like $10 million in quarter one. Now, AOC is polling around 20% in this poll, which shows she can energize a progressive base. But I truly believe that her socialist-leaning policies, like the Green New Deal, it is ammunition for the Republican Party. Her rhetoric often alienates moderates and independents who are crucial in general elections. Like, you don't have to win Colorado, New Mexico, yada, yada, yada. You need to win in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. That's where you need to win. Yeah, seriously. And most polls are showing that AOC has definitely been creeping up. You had a Yale poll showing her at 21% back in the beginning of April. And you have some polls who kind of bounce her around. But ultimately, look where we are right now. Look where we are right now with the AtlasIntel poll showing simply she's at 19 percentage points. Now, do I really think that's exactly where she's at? I don't know. Maybe that's where she's at. But she definitely is polling, at least maybe 1 out of every 5 voters as of right now. But she's still trailing Pete Buttigieg in this race, which shows I think the Democrats are wanting to move in a different direction away from Kamala Harris, away from AOC, especially at the national level. And also, you have to remember, she could have a potential Senate run against Chuck Schumer in 2028, which adds another layer of complication. There's a Data for Progress poll that showed her leading Chuck Schumer by like 20 points in a hypothetical matchup in New York. And obviously, a lot of that had to do with the blowback from Chuck Schumer helping Trump pass that continuing resolution. So she might focus on New York more than the presidency, but look, New York has been trending to the right in recent cycles. I don't know if that would just be a gimme, especially if they went from a Schumer to someone like an AOC. And for AOC and conservatives, she's a double-edged sword. Her progressive agenda could really galvanize the Republican base, but underestimating her, like maybe some people did with Trump, and I don't think she would be able to do the same thing Trump did, but I think she could 100% be underestimated. Exactly kind of taking the temperature of how much to underestimate her, where to take her seriously, I think would be a struggle for some Republicans. But what this all means is right now, Democrats nationally are at a crossroads. After Harris's 2024 loss, and AtlasIntel's poll suggesting that voters are looking for different faces, different names, different leaderships. But it suggests that there are 2 paths forward for the Democrats. A more pragmatic, centrist version of progressive populism, or just full-out Democrat socialism. Because I don't think AOC understands the pragmatism that is required in order to be an executive in America. And Democrats are struggling to find a unifying figure, which could be an opportunity for Republicans. But like we said, the AtlasIntel poll also shows that 51% of voters will pick a Democrat candidate in the 2026 midterms, but only 42% would favor a Republican, which is still a closer gap than in previous cycles, but still not great numbers to look at. But if Republicans can coalesce behind a candidate earlier, behind a messenger, but earlier than the Democrats can, they can allow them to raise money, focus on defeating the Democrats, not on defeating other Republicans inside of their party. And for Republicans, the key is going to be capitalizing on the Democrat disarray while avoiding complacency. Now, AOC's progressive energy could mobilize the GOP base and the progressive base, but I think Buttigieg might have a more moderate appeal, which might pose a tougher challenge in a general election against AOC. But ultimately, Buttigieg has issues, especially when it comes to minority voters, which we know Republicans did great with. And I think Buttigieg would also struggle with working class voters if we get down to it. But as of right now, this AtlasIntel poll gives us an early glimpse into 28. And that's all it is. It's a glimpse. It shows where Democrats are thinking, what direction. We don't know who, we don't know where, what, when, why. We know what direction they're looking. What the visions they're looking for to lead the Democrat Party forward after, grappling with their horrid policies and ideologies like identity politics. And some of the insane policy positions that they've taken over the last 8 years, and conservatives could and should watch closely. A Buttigieg-led ticket could appeal to more swing voters, while AOC's platform might be an easier target for Republicans. But either way, the GOP needs to stay sharp, unify its base, maintain the edge that they have going into 2028. But let me know, what do you think about these early 2028 numbers? Drop your thoughts down below in the comments. And as always, smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.